In my opinion, I believe the best individuals in the financial realm are the educators. If they're not big on education, me personally, I probably will not like to work with you.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast for doctors by doctors. My name is Dr. Michael Jerkins, and I am actually alone today, absent my host, Dr. Ned Palmer, who is on paternity, enjoying his life, probably listening to lots of other podcasts as he rocks a child to sleep. But we are super excited again to have another episode today, specifically focusing on a topic that we've gotten a lot of questions about on practice ownership. And specifically, this is someone who has really demonstrated a history not only of being a very successful doctor, but an entrepreneur, someone who has gotten a lot of training and experience in order to build his own practice and grow his practice in the area that he is in North Carolina. So very excited to have our guest today. And I think we can glean a lot, even if you are not a dentist, but if you're a physician or veterinarian or another doctor looking at trying to go out on your own and start your own practice or become a practice owner. There's lots of lessons here, a lot of things you don't learn in school. And I didn't learn in school, quite frankly, or in residency. So hearing from someone who's done it themselves, who understands the pitfalls, who understands the things they might have done differently if they were to do it over again, is very valuable. And I want to try to spread this information to our doctor community today. And as always, we have an email address so you can ask questions, podcast@panaceafinancial.com. If you have requests or guests you want us to bring on the show or questions you want us to answer on air, we're happy to do that. With that, we'll go to our interview. Well, today we're excited to welcome Dr. Jamine Ifedi. He is a passionate entrepreneurial dentist that's dedicated to empowering doctors of all kinds to build generational wealth beyond their white coats. After earning his MBA from East Carolina University and DDS from UNC Chapel Hill Adams School of Dentistry, he founded Empire Dental Group in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2022. As a fellow podcaster, Dr. Ifedi and his CPA, which is also his brother, created the Generational Dental Wealth podcast, helping doctors take control of their financial futures to practice with freedom and integrity, which is an awesome mission. With a deep interest in geriatrics, Dr. Ifedi has served as a travel dentist to over 100 nursing homes across the Carolinas. And additionally, he is the treasurer of the Talented, Empowered, Aspired Men, TEAM, a nonprofit he co-founded to uplift young men and empower them to realize their roles and responsibilities in society. Dr. Ifedi, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. It's a long time coming, so it's good to be here with you, man. Just seeing the journey of you and the financial institution over time. Oh man, it feels like an honor. I feel like I'm like one of the OGs.
You are. That's actually true. Well, actually, let's start there if you want. Walk us through your journey, really, maybe even before dental school, into becoming a practice owner and having the success that clearly you've had.
Oh man, so for myself personally, it's actually very similar to one of your previous guests, Dr. Yip. I was also on the pre-med track as I was going through the undergrad process, and a little bug in my ear told me about dentistry. But you get so far down one road, you're like, all right, we're going and we're staying down this road. So just like her, I actually wanted to become an OBGYN. That was my plan A, and then plan B was going to be, I guess we can call it A2, was to become a dentist. But I was more focused on the medical route. I did more shadowing experience and different experiences along those lines. So I thought I was going to go that route. So I actually, just like her, took the MCAT and I took the DAT, and I said, Lord, whichever one I do better on, that's where I'm going. So I saw the medical entrance exam score and I saw the dental entrance exam score, and I said, I'm going to be a fantastic dentist.
Well, there you go. Hey, that's easy enough, I guess. That made the decision for you.
Oh yeah.
I asked Dr. Yip this question, but I'll ask you the same one. Which test did you think was more difficult? Or maybe compare and contrast the DAT versus the MCAT.
I took actually the old MCAT and the new MCAT and the DAT, so all three exams. So the worst, I would probably say, was the new MCAT if they haven't already changed it again. That's when they first changed it to like a 7.5 hour exam. Then I would say second would probably be the DAT. And then third would be the old MCAT, which people probably don't even remember those days. Back when it was like, I think it was like 1 through 15 or 1 through 30 or something along those lines like that. That's how I would organize it. I would definitely say the DAT was more fun because it did have other aspects that you felt like were more relevant, right? Some people, we have a math component of it. Some people don't like the math component. I like the math component. I love the perceptual ability component, the puzzles and everything we get to play like that. But I closed my eyes and took the exam and just had a good time. But I took it right after the MCAT, so I didn't have to restudy a lot of the science components of it. Just had to study the components that were different, like the perceptual ability and like the math component.
Wow. Okay. Well, so that was a busy several months for you. Lots of excitement that drove lots of different decisions.
It's all at once.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, good times.
Well, actually, let's talk about that. So you knew you were going to become a doctor, weren't quite sure which path you were going to take, but you did know you wanted more training and education on the business side of things. Walk us through why you pursued your MBA and how that's maybe helped you along the way.
Believe it or not, it was actually due to a negotiation. My mother, she's a nurse practitioner. She wanted me to become a doctor. I wanted to become a businessman. First, I wanted to become a chef. And she said, well, doctors can be businessmen as well. So we actually negotiated. And I said, well, let me go ahead and go get my MBA first. Because everything, no matter what you do, you have to understand the language of business, right? It's not necessarily, people ask, did you learn about business in business school? And I'm like, you don't really necessarily learn everything about business. You learn how to speak the language of business, right? So once we had made that agreement, I did my 2 years. I stretched it out. Could have knocked it out in one, but stretched it out, enjoyed 2 full years of the MBA program. And then from there, matriculated on to dental school from there.
Okay. And walk us through how, I guess, your training and your thinking in dental school about being a practice owner to how that translated to your first couple of years out in practice.
It's actually a really good question. So knowing that I wanted to go into practice ownership, it changed the way I viewed dental school, right? When I was going through dental school, I looked through a different set of lens. I knew specializing wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. So I had to make the most of my experiences while in school. So anytime there was downtime, it depends on what track you were going. Some colleagues would spend it studying on 4 exams. I would spend it shadowing different clinics. So in that way, one of the main reasons I chose UNC Chapel Hill as a dental school is because it had every specialty. And since I was coming into dentistry later in the game, I needed to learn a lot very, very fast. So I was able to shadow the surgeons. I was shadow the pediatric dentist. I was shadow the prosthodontist, orthodontist, every particular department, so I could figure out what do I like and what I don't like, right? Because I would say most individuals who end up matriculating into dental school were probably better pre-dents than me as far as like the experiential side of things. So knowing that, I'm glad I got to see all the different clinics. And then now knowing I wanted to go into general dentistry, now I had to niche down. I still remember going into my 4th year, right? It was during the COVID time. And I was telling one of my mentors, I'm thinking about, taking an extra year going into residency, because in dentistry, you can practice straight out. So after 4 years, you can go straight into practice, or you can take some time and then go into a residency. And I remember telling him I wanted to go into a residency. He challenged me. He said, why do you want to go to a residency? And I was like, wanted to get more experience. I don't necessarily feel ready. And he said, I hear this from a lot of dentists. I don't feel ready. The question is, if you have 1 year left, why would you not get ready? And I was like, I thought about it and I said, you know what? Maybe we get so comfortable sometimes, right, with the status quo that, maybe a little bit more time is going to get me there. Maybe a little bit more time is going to get me there. But he challenged me. He said, use this next year as your residency. So I took that as a challenge and I used it as my residency. I still remember it was to the point I was doing so many experiences. I was in so many clinics. I didn't even have time to document them. And then I remember faculty pulling me aside maybe 6 months before graduation and said, you're not going to graduate. You don't have the requirements necessary to graduate. I said, I definitely have them. And he said, well, on paper, you don't have them. I said, okay, let me go get all the paperwork. And by the time they put all the paperwork together, I led the class as far as our particular cohort and our group in every other category except for Crown. Shout out to Dr. Chris Lane. He led that in that thing, right? But I just remember when they finally put it all together, they were like, oh man, you've really been doing it. And I'm kind of glad they didn't put it together, because when you don't have all your experiences, sometimes they feed you more experiences. So I don't know if they were giving me a lot of experiences because they didn't think I had it on paper, but it all worked out and really had a good time.
I love that. So maybe what would you say to the D4s out there right now that maybe aren't super confident in parts of their training, or to your point, maybe they think, okay, I know I'm going to do another year or two of training and I'll learn then. What would you say to them now in their fourth year? Many of them obviously are on their way out. So what about the D3s and D4s? What would you say to those folks?
I would definitely treat each year like it could be your last. That D4 year, regardless if you're D3, D2, whatever, that D4 year, treat it like that might be the last bit of experience that you get in school, right? So come out as ready as possible. No, you're not going to know everything, and that's completely okay. But if you can start beginning abreast on, if you just come out of school knowing what I like and what I don't like, right? What works in my hands, what doesn't work in my hands, that is a big win. So for D3s and D4s, I'm telling you, use this time to shadow the different clinics, see what you like, see what you don't like. There's a lot that goes on, especially, again, if your school has specialty programs. If you just be a fly on the wall and make yourself come in there with a servant spirit, how can I help? How can I assist? That is going to open up so many doors. Well, now you'll be able to assist and do a lot of the procedures that you want to see, right? It's better that you see it first anyways before you do it first. So it's actually a nice stepping stone into the more complex procedures that you want to get into.
I see this a lot with trainees, whether it be dental, vet, or medical, is a lot of times transitioning from the book knowledge and test taking to the real world kind of clinical can be hard for some, especially if you've not had a lot of work experience before. But I think you hit the nail on the head of showing up and saying, hey, what can I do to help? And the amount of opportunities that will be available to you, I think, to your point, becomes a lot greater than simply treating it as I'm going to learn and study and then just kind of go on my way. But really, I mean, it's a job, right? So you need to show up and work and see how you can make their job easier by being there. Because you and I both know sometimes having trainees around certainly doesn't make your job more efficient or easier.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, walk us through. So get done with dental school. You obviously put in the work. You were clinically, sounds like at the top of your game you could possibly be as a D4. Did you jump right into being a practice owner? Walk us through your journey after that to where you are today with your clinic.
So you remember when I told you that I had to negotiate to be able to have the opportunity to go to MBA school? I had to negotiate when it came to practice ownership as well. The same mom came into the room and I said, you know what, when I graduate, I want to own a practice straight out. And she said, you know, that might not be the best idea. All right. And sometimes, again, when you have a mentor-mentee relationship, I understand that your parents, in most cases, play a mentor relationship, regardless if you have fully comprehended that or no, or not, right? And you have to understand that is somebody giving you feedback because they want you to be aware of something, or are they pushing their own fears onto you, right? So when I talked to her, she said it might be best for you to get a year underneath you, and then you'll be able to be a little bit more experienced when you go through it. And I had to really analyze that piece of information to see, does that pertain to me, or is that a fear that she had? So when I analyzed it, I said, you know what, that does pertain to me, because I was a pre-dent who got into it later, right? I was never a dental assistant, right? I have dental assistants in our office now who are matriculating into dental school soon. I tell them all the time, you're going to be a much better pre-dent than I was, right? So, okay, I need to get a year underneath my belt. I need to get prepared for this journey of practice ownership to make sure I can serve my patients in the best capacity as possible. So knowing that going into my D4 year, I knew I need to get a lot more experiences underneath my belt as soon as possible. Same thing when it came to dental school. So when I was graduating, I remember you go through a process when you're in these professional programs where everybody has their life planned out. Oh, after I graduate, I'm doing X, Y, Z. I'm going to buy a house on this particular neighborhood. And I'm going to do this at this particular time, because you're around a lot of driven, very intellectual people, right? And I just remember it being April. It'd be actually around this time. And I remember people were asking me, so what are you going to do? And I told them, honestly, I don't even know yet. And I'm okay with not knowing, because I know what I'm going to do is a lot different than what other people are going to do, right? Obviously, you will have your plan B and your plan C lined up. But it was come April time when I finally signed my contract. It was between two general dentists here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they needed a surgically inclined dentist to go between the two different offices, right? I'm a new grad, so I wouldn't necessarily say surgically inclined or not, but I did a lot of work in the surgery departments, right? So coming in, they didn't do any extractions. By the time I graduated school, I did double the requirements for extractions. So I already felt pretty confident when it came to that, because we have a very good OMFS faculty at UNC. So I remember my first day on the job, because you're waiting, especially as a dentist, you're waiting to see, your license number pop up on a North Carolina dental board or whatever state you're from, because that's when you can officially start practicing. You might have already passed everything, graduated, but until it's on the website, you're not legally able to practice. I remember checking every single day. Is it going to pop up? Is it going to pop up? Because my contract was actually set to start, I want to say July, but I told them as soon as this comes through, I'm ready. Like, let's do it. So when it finally popped up, I remember shooting a text. I'm ready. I can come in today. They said, all right, come in tomorrow. We're gonna get things going. I'm gonna move a case up, and it's gonna be all yours. And the first day in the office, I did a full mouth extraction. I remember taking out 31 teeth on this 18-year-old child, had a completely bombed out mouth. I remember the parents saying that, everybody in our family has dentures. This is a rite of passage for him. And it was hard to see, but to be able to help him go through that process and to do one of the most extensive procedures, honestly, within dentistry, which is taking an entire mouth out, tooth by tooth, and understand when it's somebody who's 18, their roots are going to be longer, the teeth are going to be more formed. It's much easier to take out a full mouth of bombed out teeth versus a mouth that is bombing out, right? So going through that, making sure we preserve as much bone as possible, making sure he can have the opportunity to have implants in the future to be able to restore his smile wasn't a process. It took me, I want to say 6 to 8 hours on my first day just on that one patient. All right. But the thing about it is when you start as hard as it gets, it's only down here from there. So from then I had the confidence knowing that, okay, I can do this. And then from there, throughout the entire first year to the first year and a half of practicing, I was a travel dentist. So I'm dually licensed in North and South Carolina. I've worked in over 100 different cities, worked in different nursing homes, worked in different offices. And that was my opportunity to, number one, express my passion for geriatrics, because I absolutely love geriatrics. And then number two, be able to see what all these different practice settings are, right? What kind of equipment do the big guys use, right? What kind of materials do they use, right? What kind of payroll systems do they use? And as I'm learning, I'm taking notes to figure out, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So by the time we open up, okay, everything makes sense. These decisions we're making are not necessarily, because I saw it at one office. It's no, because I saw it across 20 different offices, and this is what they say they like or don't like about it.
Wow. I mean, that's about as good of experience as you could get leading into, hanging up your own shingle. Well, walk us through that. So was it a year and a half? Is it 2 years as a travel dentist before you opened this practice? Walk us through when you felt like you were ready enough to start on your own.
If you ask my younger self, I was ready in my D4 year. But as far as again, there's something that's bigger than me that guides my steps. So when it came throughout the process, it was graduated May 2021, started practicing the first week of June 2021, and then from there we went under contract in August of 2022. And then we closed October 2022. So maybe a year and a half from the time we graduated to the time we actually closed on the practice, which in itself was a process, 500 plus mailers, sending them out, talking to different dentists, going all over the states to figure out which would be the best home. But then we closed. But to be honest with you, some people can search for a year and a half. So just very blessed on how everything came together.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of dentists, and it, to your point, it's surprising, depending on their market, how many years it takes for them to really be able to open up, whether it be acquiring a practice that's even in the neighborhood they want or the area they want, or finding a market that fits their kind of career goals and has a clear demand. I think I get this question a lot too of people who are starting and really starting anything, right? I mean, look, you have a nonprofit, you have a podcast, you have a clinic, like you've done a lot of things that go from idea to fruition, and the journey between idea and the first ever customer or the first ever user or the first ever episode, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And you already mentioned a few things on your clinic of the mailers and talking to dentists, but like walk us through, or maybe what advice would you give to a brand new practice owner who is kind of mapping out their business plan on between the day of closing to the day of seeing your first patient?
Best thing I could say is surround yourself by people who know more than you. I mean, that's the best you can possibly do. So you can start asking questions. Also, it's good to take inventory of yourself to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at. Because understand, everybody, when you ask them for advice, is going to give you advice based off their own past experiences. And it's up to you to filter what matches and what doesn't match, right? So for me personally, when I was going through the process, I remember sitting down with a lot of colleagues who were already practice owners, multi-practice owners, sitting down with them, asking them, simple questions like, should we acquire the real estate? Should we acquire AR? How should we go about the patient management? How should we go about setting this up, that up? And they were able to answer a lot of my questions. So as I'm going through it, I'm asking questions, and I'm going back to the clinics that I'm working at, and I'm also juxtaposing my experiences on that side. So when I'm comparing all these things together, it's starting to make sense. For those individuals currently going through that, number one, I would say just understand your cash flow is going to be king. You want to make sure that you're keeping cash flowing. One hidden secret that most people don't really utilize enough when it comes to starting your practice is, if you can, keep the job that you have. If you can balance both, that is a way to really push yourself to the next level, right? So even when it comes to like management of working capital, when you know, okay, if I can work 1 day a week, I can have, okay, about $4,000 to $5,000 extra coming in per month. That extra $4,000 to $5,000, especially if you have a low cost of living already, can literally grease the wheels necessary to get your practice to where it needs to be. Early on in the early days, you want to push as much as you can into the fire so it can keep things moving, right? So you don't want to be a hindrance or a burden to your practice's growth. So something my wife and I always joke about is that our practice was our first baby. And we have to really treat it that way and cultivate it, because at first it can't stand on its own. But eventually it's going to hit a critical capacity where it is now able to stand on its own, and it's independent of us, right? And other doctors can start working on it, and it's going to take its own life of its own. But in the early years, it's going to need a lot of us.
Makes a lot of sense. And a lot of questions we get for folks right out of residency or dental school is, well, what about my student debt? So I don't know if you had any student debt or much student debt at all, but what advice do you give to dental students on how to handle their student loans and get into practice ownership?
I'll two-phase this, right? I'll give advice to those who are interested in going into dentistry and one who are actually dentists, right? Because right now, people don't know, but dentistry is the most expensive professional degree out there, right? Medicine, they come out with usually about $250,000, right? Lawyers come out about $150,000. Dentists come out with north of $300,000 now these days, right? On a loan that size, that's $3,600 a month you're spending to service that kind of loan if you're paying it straight. Right? Then on top of that, understand that is post-tax money, right? There's certain compounding things that if you really understand what $3,600 looks like post-tax, especially if you're an associate, it will wipe you out. It will absolutely wipe you out. So when it comes to those who have not entered dentistry yet, right, I always say the same two things: stay public and stay in state. If you can do those two things, that in itself is going to wipe out at least $100,000 on your debt load, if not more, right? Well, I'm privileged to be in North Carolina. We have 3 dental schools, right? When I was going through, we had 2 dental schools. Chapel Hill being one of the top 2 dental schools in the nation, and then East Carolina University, which is the most cost-effective dental school in the nation. Them and Texas A&M have gone back and forth on who's the most cost-effective on that front, right? But let's say if you go to East Carolina University, you're coming out with maybe $125,000. I mean, that's 1/3 of what people are coming out with now. And we're coming out with the same DDS and the same DMD. You understand what I'm saying? So when you're making those decisions strategically, you're starting to understand, okay, my decisions today is going to set up myself for tomorrow. For those who are already a doctor, right, and now you're having to worry about the loans itself, I would not let your student loans stop you from purchasing a practice. Because if the lenders don't believe that that's a hindrance, why would you think that that's a hindrance, right? I mean, you have to understand the quickest way to pay something off is to get a bigger shovel. So you have to understand that if you know that you need to pay off your student loans and that's important to you, you want to get it done in a timely manner, you have to understand that loans are being paid post-tax. If you have a CPA, I really encourage you to sit down with your CPA or sit down with your accountant of any sort, or even a family member who understands taxation, and talk to them and help. I want them to help guide you through what it looks like paying something off post-tax and how much you have to pay, right? So if something's, let's say, a $300,000 loan, right? If you're paying it off over enough time, you're probably paying $600,000. Right? Depending on how long your term is. If you're doing, one of those income-based repayment plans, 25 years, you're going to end up paying $600,000, $300,000 in principal, $300,000 in interest. Now, if that's post-tax money and you're being, let's say conservatively, 25% tax bracket, then technically you're paying 25% on top of that 600,000. So you just have to understand, if you're going to pay it off, you need to get the biggest shovel possible. If practice ownership is for you, if you feel like there's something that you align with internally, that is going to be the quickest way you pay off your student debt.
And I totally agree. I think too, there's, as you and I both know, there's a lot of folks who are financial advisors or CPAs or advisors in general to doctors. At least they want to be, and but they don't understand student loans. And I always say this: if there's anyone that's trying to advise you on money as a doctor, and they say they've advised other doctors, get their name and their reference, like a reference, get a phone number, talk to the people that have actually worked with these folks, because a lot of people say they work with doctors but have no clue on our financial life cycle, which is very different. And if they don't understand student loans, they don't understand public service loan forgiveness or income-based repayment plans, how can they possibly advise you on the paths you should take when those are two big ones? And too many times I've seen doctors talk to financial advisors who actually don't understand student loans at all, which is the elephant in the room for any financial decision that a doctor is making. And if they can't address that, then they're not worth the money you'd be paying them anyway. I don't know if you agree, but that's my advice to doctors.
I agree 100%, and that's why I believe Panacea plays such an interesting role. And again, I don't want to turn this into a commercial, right? But it plays an interesting role because if you're getting your money advice from someone who does not understand the way you get your money, it's like they're telling you very basic information for a very sophisticated situation, right? And that's why I say it's always important to understand what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you like, what you don't like. So when you're getting feedback, you know how to put it through your filter. Right? Because if you don't have a filter and everybody can put information into you, the outcome you might not like. It might not look like what you expected it to be, right? So again, one of the things that really turned me on when it came to Panacea was the fact that you did have the PRN loan, right? I wasn't personally going through a residency. I didn't have to apply and have to worry about how you're going to be squeezed financially, right? But these kind of products that are available to doctors, each of them are going to serve a particular purpose, right? I don't need that now, but somebody might have needed that, even me, if I was in that situation coming from my D4 year. So you need to work with people who have the products that service your needs, right? And again, if that's a financial advisor, I would ask them, just like you said, are you working with other doctors, right? And I would love to talk to the other doctors. In my opinion, I believe the best individuals in the financial realm are the educators. If they're not big on education, me personally, I probably would not like to work with you, because I like for you to teach me how to solve my problems, right? And then once I get to a certain point that I've hit my top level of learning, now I need to come back for more, right? Some people like to be the source of the information and the holders of the information, right? You have to be one or the other. Right? You want to give somebody information, let them do their research, let them figure out the problem. So then now they'll bring a bigger problem to you. So that's what I think about when I think of my advisors.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And we kind of do that as doctors, right? Like a lot of our job is actually just teaching and educating patients. And if you're not doing that and you're just waiting for people to have an issue to come see you, then that's not really the job, quite frankly. And so, at Panacea, we just live by this motto of trying to make doctors' lives better. That doesn't mean that every doctor is necessarily a customer, but if we can educate every doctor and make every doctor a little bit smarter, give them the resources to make their own choices and informed choices, then that's great, right? That's the mission. And having lived through it, and I know you have too, navigating this with your typical bank or your typical financial advisor, insurance agent, attorney, CPA, whoever, a lot of people want to do business with us, but they have no business helping us. You know what I mean? So it was important for us at the beginning of this, from a mission perspective, right? All the stuff you said, I'm trying not to make it a commercial either, but it's hard. I get passionate about this, right? Like you see so many people going through it, misled or uninformed, and make poor choices that really not only impact them, but this is what I try to tell all the non-doctors is like, you might not be a doctor, but you're a patient. Everyone's a patient. And if you have a bunch of unhappy doctors that made bad financial choices, that can't practice in the way they want to, can't practice where they want to, can't see the patients they want to, then all of us are impacted, right? So it's a way to make a large impact on society by helping such an important group as our community. But this is your interview, not mine, so I'm going to shut up. But
No, I say rattle it off, man. Educators.
yeah, that's right. Well, I want to ask you on the going back to kind of the financial aspect of being a practice owner, right? You're not just a clinician now, and that's what I hear a lot from doctors. I would say more commonly the early career dentists, especially, is like, hey, I want to be a clinician. I don't want to worry about the management of other people, of staff, of worrying about the finances, the supplies, equipment, insurance. What would you say to those people who say, hey, I don't think I could be a practice owner. I just don't want to do this one thing. I don't want to mess with all these other stresses of being a practice owner. How do you yourself balance it, and how would you address those concerns?
I think that's completely okay. I think if you don't want to deal with those, then don't move into practice ownership, or choose how you move into practice ownership. One thing that I feel like is a very underserved area within practice ownership are partnerships. I feel like if you know that is not your strong suit, right, there's a lot of challenges that you have to deal with as a practice owner, right? So maybe you share those challenges with somebody else who is more in line with that as their strength, right? So if you know, okay, the business side I don't like, but the management of people I like. Partner with somebody who doesn't like the management of people, but likes the business side of things, right? I remember even talking to Rob, VP, right? And I remember we were talking on the phone, and he was looking at particular partnerships that he was trying to figure out how to do the valuation on, right? And he sparked my interest because I'm thinking to myself, okay, how do you even break down what this partnership looks on paper? And he's saying he's definitely seeing an uptick on partnerships. And I'm glad to hear that. I feel like we have to stop the, either practice owner or nothing. Other ways you can get into it. Now, I do want to warn that not all partnerships are necessarily built that way. And that's why I usually having a test period, whether it be a year to 2 years, to get to know who is this individual that you're working with or working for. Is this somebody I'm in line with from a moral standpoint, from a financial controller standpoint, right? I wouldn't want to partner with somebody who spends everything in the bank account. That's me personally, right? I would like to be somebody who likes to reinvest into the business. But again, if you like to spend what's in the bank account, then you probably don't want to partner with me. You see, so it's all about what do you like, what don't you like, what are your strengths, what are not your strengths. The best partnerships are when you have somebody who is opposite of you in different ways, but y'all can still communicate. So when it comes to practice ownership, I want people to first understand: does this align with me as a person? Do I enjoy the challenges that come with practice ownership? Don't just look at the upside, right? Obviously, practice owners make more. Obviously, practice owners have an asset to sell at the end, usually, hopefully, right? Obviously, practice owners have a larger capacity of lendability, right? There are a lot of pros associated with it, but if you're not okay with the cons, then there's nothing wrong with being a doctor, working for a hospital, working for a bigger corporation, and using the proceeds you make to invest in a business that you are passionate about, right? You can be an owner without being a dental practice owner. You might partner with your brother who owns car washes, right? You might partner with your sister who owns an entire line of restaurants. So figure out what hard is good for you and choose that hard.
And that's the great thing, I think, about being a doctor is, one, it's a cool job, right? It's a cool set of skills that we learn to help other humans that need help. It also gives you optionality. It's not just one thing. There's all sorts of ways to help folks, and it gives you optionality on what that looks like. And, as you probably know, a lot of people start out one thing 2 or 3 years in and say, hey, I don't really like this practice environment, or I want to go back, get more training, or I want to change the way I'm practicing or the environment. And you can do that. So you don't have to decide right now and that be your end all be all. And I totally agree on the partnership piece. Is we see this not only the dental, medical, but also vet, of people saying, hey, I don't really want to own the whole thing outright. I would rather just own a piece of it and have some say in how this corporation is run, have some ownership, have some skin in the game, build some wealth, and have a little bit more control over how I practice while not having to deal with all of it by yourself. But you're right, not all partnerships are created equal. It's kind of like a legal marriage, right? I mean, there's A lot of people that shouldn't marry certain people, they want to test out. That's called dating. You want to date a practice for a while, understand if you're comfortable getting that legal marriage, because it really is that. And it can be really great and also can be not so great. So having a team that knows more than you, back to what you said, having a team like a CPA, it's amazing. An attorney, that's amazing. Someone that can actually look under the hood, the financials of this practice, and inform you in ways that you can't inform yourself is great, in addition to what you said, again, of having that test period. I mean, would you agree with all those kind of pieces of advice?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think one particular area that I feel like lenders in general are starting to step more into is becoming more of that advisor. They're not necessarily telling you everything to do, but based on their algorithms, they're telling you this is a good idea or this is not a good idea, right? And I implore everybody, if you do hear news that you don't like, don't take it personal, right? Take it as a challenge of how do I need to prepare for this opportunity moving forward, right? I remember one conversation I was having again with Rob and asking, what does it look like for expansion, right? And he gave me particular matrices to look at when it came to how much production per op. Now I know mentally, okay, these are the numbers that I need to be shooting for to know when it's time to take the next step. Sometimes we want to take the next step before you're ready for the next step. And that's when you start to hit critical capacity. And what used to be a nice situation becomes a dangerous situation.
Yeah. There's a lot of financial choices we make along the way. And as we both know, sometimes doctors can be very confident in their clinical skills, and that's appropriate. But sometimes we're confident in our financial skills, and we might not actually have the competency there yet. So let me ask you this. How can doctors transform their white coats into a lasting financial legacy?
I think personally we have some amazing tools at our disposal. First of all, I do want us to let us know that we have a lot more available to us than we actually realize. I think three main ways, again, there's a lot of ways, and this, what I'm saying is going to apply to most people, but not all people, right? Put it through your own filter, and if it matches, then it matches, and if it doesn't, take what parts match and ask about other parts that don't match, and that's completely okay. When it comes to me, I think of three main parts. I think of real estate, I think of stocks, and I think of business ownership, right? On the real estate side of things, for those who have not heard about it, we have doctor loans available to us, all right? I'm not sure if you own a home or don't own a home out there, but understand when you do purchase your home, you have the ability to purchase a home with as little as 0% down in most cases, right? So what happens when you make those decisions right early, right? Because for most people, when you start practicing, your first home you purchase is probably not going to be your last home. So why not use that first home as an ability to be able to get into something you and your family are comfortable with, right? Or you yourself are comfortable with, understanding that I'm buying this home as a future investment and a current place of peace and serenity, right? Now, I know in the future, I'm either going to sell it for a gain or I'm going to keep it and keep some passive income going. Some people say, I don't want to be a landlord. There are property management companies out there that can help you out with that. But if you want to be done with it completely, you can sell it. And if you've been living in a home for a certain amount of years, you can basically get it all the gain tax free. Talk to your CPA, right? Well, everything I'm saying, talk to your advisors. So then from there, now what happens when you start to stack a few doctor's loans on top of one another? People don't know you can have multiple doctor's loans. I'm a product of it. You can get multiple doctor loans. Obviously, everything we're saying, do it responsibly. As you take steps, take a step forward. I remember the first one I got, it was a very small one, right? And that's completely okay. And as you start to make more, you start to want to move up. Now I like to look at it like this. You have a class of assets that tells your journey, right? I have from when I was first a doctor looking at that property now to now, okay, a few years ago where we were to where we are now to where we're going to be in the future. And I can look back at these different assets as literally markers for where I was in time. Going into dental school, again, from one of my good friends, he gave me a piece of advice. He said, if you can buy your home on the way into dental school, buy it. Chapel Hill, back then, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, was reasonable. You could buy into the market. We bought when we were going into dental school. By the time we graduated, it 5x'd. So when you're looking at it like that, again, instead of looking at it like, oh, I can't buy exactly what I want, think about it like, okay, I'm going to buy my way into what I want, right? It's okay to take stepping stones. Okay, all right. I bought a small condo while I was in dental school, 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms. Okay, I can rent it out the extra bedroom to a classmate. Okay, I graduated. I'm gonna buy me a single family home, 3 bedrooms, or might buy a duplex, right? Okay, cool. All right, now I move to the next step journey. Okay, I'm gonna buy me a full quadplex if I can afford it, or a duplex, right? Most doctors don't loan up to past a duplex. Then from there, you can move on. Okay, I'm going to finally buy the home that I want. By the time you get the home that you want, you keep all those other streams of income. They're paying for the home that you want. From there, you might move into the stocks. Again, when it comes to 401ks and IRAs, obviously, depending on who your employer is, you have the ability to chip away and put a lot of different finances away for your future self. You live with a different level of stress, and burnout isn't as prevalent when you know that what I'm doing matters. What I'm doing is actually working, right? Burnout tends to stem from either you're doing a repeated function that you're not necessarily happy with, or number two, you don't know if it's working. So when you're putting funds away into something that's growing, you're putting yourself into a solid place. So we talked about earlier that dentists graduate with over $300,000 in student debt. The monthly service for that is about $3,600 a month. If you took what you're spending on student loans and you invest that over, let's just say 20 years, right? You graduate at 30, you retire by 50. This is short. Most people are going to practice way past then. But let's say 20 years. What if you stayed in state and you stayed public and you came out with little to no student debt, or you bought your house on the way in and you sold it and you paid off the rest of your student debt, that $3,600 across 20 years at just, let's say, 8% interest, right? That's going to be over $2 million that you're able to now grow. And that's what I'm saying. You have to make the proper steps. And the thing about finances, right? You don't have a lot of decisions, but you have some very important decisions. Where you live, where do you work, how do you work? Do you want to own? Do you not want to own? You have a few very important decisions that if you make those decisions right, it's going to change your entire financial trajectory. And last but not least, practice ownership. Do you want to be a practice owner? Do you not want to be a practice owner, right? Medical doctors, from everything that I've researched, again, you can tell me if I'm wrong, you can step into practice ownership for anywhere between $100,000 to $500,000, including build out and everything. Dentistry is a lot different. $500,000 to easily over $1 million is what it's taken to start a practice. So you got to figure out, is that what I want to do, right? Do I want to own the building? Do I not want to own the building? Do I want to sell the asset later? Do I want to keep it as a lifelong business? These are the kind of decisions you need to start making. But if you're able to now choose your real estate properly, right? Regardless if you're going to rent it out or if you're going to keep it, if you're able to now stash away simply what you would have paid towards student loans, I'm not saying stash away anything crazy. Let's say $3,600 a month you're able to stash away, right? For some people that might be crazy depending on where you are in your journey, right? But once you start hitting the maturity in your career, $3,600, if you really press towards it, you can hit that. Then you talk about if you decide I want to be a practice owner or I want to be an associate and I know I'm going to invest in a different business class. You hit those things right, 20 years, you're going to look up and say, oh my God.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. I would say if people just listened and understood 10% of that, they would be pretty good. That's great, and that's also probably a plug for your podcast, I would guess too. You guys go over a lot of this stuff.
A lot of stuff. We have fun with it.
And so let me ask you some quick rapid fire questions as we wrap up here, and then we always have our final question. But we'll start with this: true or false? Treating patients is the easiest part of running a practice.
True, usually.
Okay. Why is that true?
Because depending on the patient, me personally, I enjoy the patient care component of it more sometimes than the challenge that come with practice ownership. So for me, it is more true than it is false. But I could see how other people could think the other way.
What is one piece of financial advice every new dentist should learn before graduating dental school?
The first thing you buy at a dental school is probably going to determine how you treat your finances. If the first thing you buy is a brand new car, unless the rare incidents that you actually broke down your car and you need a new one, the first thing you buy is usually going to dictate the rest. The first thing I bought when I graduated dental school was an engagement ring for my wife. I set the tone. I let her know this is how we're going to be moving with our finances. You are the priority. Our family is the priority. So one thing, if I could tell you, buy the house before you buy the car. That doesn't mean go and buy the house right after you graduate. Settle into a city, make sure you like the area, make sure you can see yourself there long term. But if you can, buy the appreciating asset before the depreciating asset.
Makes a lot of sense. What's the best resource you go to regularly for advice on practice ownership?
Podcast. Honestly, I was turned on to a business podcast when I was, a second year in dental school. I didn't even know they existed. But when I started hearing it, to be honest with you, you'll start learning that some of your best friends you don't even know. You're going to be listening to certain people like Dr. Jerkins in your ears, and you're going to be like, I feel like we're best friends. Y'all have never met. It gives you an opportunity to really meet people that you would have never had an opportunity to be able to understand how their brain works. And that's why I love podcasts so much. I can learn from Mark Cuban, right? What he thinks about healthcare by just listening to a podcast. When would I ever had to hear his takes on medicine, right? So I would say if you're interested in practice ownership, the best thing you can do is start diving in and really just eating as much information about practice ownership as possible.
That's great. What is the best book you've read in the last year?
Definitely E-Myth Revisited when it came to practice ownership, understanding the difference between working in your business and working on your business, two completely different things, and how to influence people, how to win friends and influence people. I would say Michael Gerber was a very good book. It just helps you understand how to communicate with people and understand how do you compensate people in a conversation. I feel like sometimes, even employees, sometimes you think, oh, if I just pay them more, they're going to be completely okay. Sometimes just giving somebody a compliment, right? And just understanding how can I connect with this person on a deeper level. So me personally, I like to ask a lot more questions than I answer. But when rare scenarios like this, when you're throwing them rapid fire on me like that,
That's tough. That's tough. No, that advice makes sense. I give that even to my own kids as they're learning how to engage with people and talk. All right. Our last question, we ask every single guest this. What is one thing that you have recently changed your mind about? We consume lots of information this day and age, but it's sometimes hard for us to think all this information we consume, has it actually informed a change of an idea or concept?
I used to have a long-term hold mindset, but I'm changing my mind to always have everything for sale, if that makes sense, right? Like, so for instance, a piece of real estate that we owned. I always had the mindset that I'm holding on to every piece of real estate. I'm never selling anything. But you have to understand that not everything you get is supposed to last in every season, right? So it's not necessarily just a financial tip, but understanding that there are different seasons for different things, whether that is a piece of real estate, whether that is a friend, whether that's a mentor. So just understanding that not everything is for always. And that was a big shift for me, because being somebody who would fight and hold on, do everything I could to maintain certain relationships, to maintain a piece of real estate, to maintain this particular business relationship. Now I understand that just because the season changed does not mean that person's a bad person or that piece of real estate is bad. It just means where you're going does not match where you came from.
Love that. Well, Dr. Ifedi, this was amazing. You have a world of wisdom. I'm going to go back and re-listen to this and take notes. And I really appreciate the words of advice you have on doctors throughout their entire career, even the pre-meds or pre-dental students. Where can people find more of you? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So if you're looking for us, you can find us on Generational Dental Wealth. That is our podcast. If you're looking for us on Instagram or Facebook, it is My Dental Wealth. We have pop-ups in different cities where we just come and we honestly sit down and talk about different financial topics, right? Knee to knee, face to face. How can we get everybody to where they want to be? Everything we do is free. So if you come out, if you have any questions, you can shoot us DMs. People shoot us DMs all the time. If it's a financial related question, the CPA will answer it. If it's about business ownership, I'll answer it. And we are really building a good team of people who are just passionate about what we do.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Jamine Ifedi, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show today.
Thank you for your time, you and your team. Thank you for everything y'all do. Keep up the great work.
Thanks for joining us this episode, and you can catch the podcast for Doctors by Doctors on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and all the other major podcasting platforms. If you enjoyed this episode or learned anything here today, please take a moment to give us a rating and subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode release. To submit topic suggestions or guest suggestions or questions, you can reach us at podcast@panaceafinancial.com. As always, thanks for listening, and the next time you see a doctor, maybe you should prescribe them this podcast. See you next time.